Succession's finale finally aired today, and I thought it was beautiful. I think that the reason Succession's finale worked so well for me was primarily because of two things. First, I think it managed to retain this sense of circularity that it has been showing us throughout the seasons, the notion of infinite repetition without change, an unbroken loop of abuse and struggle for power between the Roy siblings. And yet, I think it also managed to portray enough of a change in the power structure and dynamics by the end that it was enough to make for a very satisfying finale. Before I go into more details, be warned that there obviously will be spoilers for the entire series ahead. The most beautiful aspect of this finale is that it feels like it acts as a microcosm for the entire series. The events that happen here represent and clearly portray all the themes and messages that the show has been highlighting since it first started, and it re-represents them all in this one episode. To touch on circularity, all we need to do is watch the power struggle between the Roy siblings here. We start with Shiv and Kendall vying to win over Roman's vote. Kendall to ensure that the Gojo deal doesn't go through, and Shiv to ensure that it does. We witness the usual clash of personalities in the fight for position of CEO, here most clearly manifesting in Shiv and Kendall. However, the cycle is broken with the realization that Matsson plans to betray Shiv and give the CEO position to someone else. As has often happened in the show before, Shiv realizes that she has been used by someone, and the Roy siblings team up. Begrudgingly, Roman and Shiv finally agree to allow Kendall to be CEO, realizing that there is no alternative, and that perhaps he truly is the one who makes the most sense. And all seems well for a while. They're happy and they're bonding. We see a rare moment of them being siblings in all their innocence, and they share this moment in the kitchen where they are kids once again, at peace with one another and having fun as they force Kendall to have a meal fit for a king as celebration. But then, when the time for the vote comes, Shiv hesitates, leaving the room. Kendall and Roman follow, and in the ensuing struggle to realign things, the truce and partnership once again breaks. The innocence is lost as each character redisplays their worst traits in full focus, bubbling them to the surface as they always end up doing. These three characters have a lot of bad traits, and we are aware of this, and it's in these moments of struggle that they always reappear in full focus. Their true colors, their true thoughts and feelings, those molded by years of abuse at the hands of their tyrannical father and absent mother. Ken is once more enveloped in his own ego, Shiv in her envy, and Roman in weakness. This cycle of enemies to friends and then back to enemies at each other's throats is the cycle that these characters have been repeating since the beginning of the show, and its final repetition here sums up all that came before very neatly. It's a never-ending loop between these three who can never come to a compromise because none of them is capable of ever accepting the possibility of putting aside their own desires for the sake of the other. This circularity, of course, exhibits itself in all the character endings that follow. But what makes it more conclusive this time, what makes it satisfying, what allows it to bring about a little sense of closure, at least for me, was the slight changes that came about within the tragic roller coaster loop that these characters have been riding since the start of the show. Tom, for example, has accomplished great change in rank and position, having been made CEO by Matsson. But has he truly changed at all? I don't think so. He's more powerful in appearance, a figurehead and face to the public, but in truth he remains what he always has been. A servile man who has no pride of his own, placed in a position that, for the most part, he has no control over. Merely a puppet, a pain sponge to take flack for the decisions of those who are truly in control. Greg has grown slightly as a person, in the sense that he has become more and more corrupt, using knowledge and information to cash in favors with those more powerful. And to a sense, he has grown some courage, as we see when he slaps Tom after being confronted by him, when Tom finds out that Greg informed Kendall of Matsson's betrayal. Greg is a tiny bit stronger than before in personality, but ultimately he is still where he is, a servant to Tom's whims and subject to the power of those in charge. For so long he remained undecided, merely following whoever he felt was strongest in the moment, and it ended for him as it started, with not much advancement and no one on his side but Tom, who only helps him because it's the only relationship where he can feel like the man in charge, like the big guys he smooches up to, whereas Greg is the Tom outcome of the situation. Roman, at the beginning of the series, had stepped away from the main leadership at Waystar, having not found himself a good fit for that setting. In the finale, he's once again detached himself from the company, as we see him sitting at a bar away from everything, having a drink. It's a representation of the persona he'd left behind in his pursuit for power within the company, the persona of the uncaring, funny playboy type that he was before he got caught up in all the mess of Succession. The only difference now is that he seems to have gotten some sense of self-awareness. In that moment, when Shiv decided to vote against Ken's plans, in a moment of odd clarity, he seems to realize,
we are bullshit. We're nothing.
Referring to him, Kendall, and Shiv, echoing words in a similar vein to what his father had once told them.
But you are not serious people.
He realizes that perhaps none of them were ever qualified for this, and that all they are is children vying for power. And this marks significant growth for Roman, with the realization that his more mature siblings seem to have not come to terms with. Shiv, on the other hand, falls back into the cycle of betrayal that she's exhibited before. Shiv has never stuck to one side, whether that be Logan, her siblings, Gil, Tom, or anyone. She is disloyal by nature, and that comes from the fact that she feels she is undermined and looked over because she is a woman. It seems like her father never took her seriously because of this fact, and this made her hyper-aware to such behavior from others around her. She's envious of the opportunities given to her brothers, her seemingly never having been considered for the position of CEO by Logan from the start, and so she can't tolerate to see anyone else get that power when it feels like she was never even given a fair shot at it. No equal footing. I think she votes to sell to Gojo because she thinks if she can't be in power, her siblings shouldn't be either. Because it isn't fair, because maybe by doing this, she manages to have her moment of vengeance on her siblings, for electing Mencken, for not including her, vengeance on her father, for always looking her over. Regardless, though we end with her still in play, she has no position and no power within the company. She is sidelined once more, completely separate as she was back at the beginning. Her only connection now is through Tom, a relationship we see rekindled in the last moments of the episode as they leave in a car together. But the relationship is as toxic as it was at the beginning, except for different reasons. At first, Shiv never seemed to love Tom because she felt he was weak and servile, and so it was always him chasing after her while she was neutral. Now they seem to be coming back, but it's clear that there is no love there, only emptiness. After all the knives they stuck in each other's backs, after all the words that were said, things may have become clearer between them, but we have no idea if that makes things better or worse. However, we can at least tell that in that moment, it's not good. And lastly, Kendall. Kendall has been trying to take the crown since the very beginning, the crown that he was promised since he was a child. It's his whole identity, his whole purpose in life. But just like before, he cannot catch a win. As always, he comes up with plans and he charges forward, but he can never make it past the finish line. Something stands in his way every single time, sending him hurtling back to rock bottom. And as has always happened, he tries to convince his siblings to stand with him, but then when they don't, he becomes angry and spiteful and acts superior. It's that same cycle as he tries to grasp at what he believes is rightfully his. In that sense, Kendall's story is the most circular. It is, in the words of Jeremy Strong, a doom loop. He cannot escape from it, and in the finale, he's rebuked as he always has been. The difference here is in two things, though. First, Kendall has, with every attempt, lost more of his humanity, lost more of his morals, lost more of whatever goodness he initially had. He abandoned his children, allowed a fascist to become president, killed someone and forgot about it, and so much more. Slowly, he has lost himself in the pursuit of this crown. Slowly, he has turned into his father, or the closest thing to him, minus all the success. And I think that's the most tragic part of it. He's his father in every sense as far as the negatives of his personality, but he doesn't have the massive accomplishments and sense of success that his father had to back it up. He lost his own soul for nothing. But in addition to that, the second change is that now, this iteration of this tragic cycle feels like it may be his last. It feels like there's no coming back from this, no retry. He's lost the throne forever, and just watching him stare into the waters at the end of the finale almost cements that notion. He's destroyed and defeated more than he's ever been. This is not a loss that he can bounce back from. For better or for worse, perhaps he has finally exited the loop. Succession's ending was beautiful, and the more I think on it, and the more I hear from the series creator Jesse Armstrong and the actors' thoughts, the more I feel like the beauty and power of this conclusion comes from this blending of consistency and change. The show did not break the tragic cycles that it has had its characters running through since episode 1, but it brought levels of change within them to give the ending a satisfying final punch, a sense of finality that doesn't break the consistent bounds of the loop and never interferes with the integrity of these characters' personalities. They are all basically where they always were, and on top of that, they are almost exactly as they were before, if not worse. There is no redemption, no retribution, no sudden changes of heart. They are all as bad as they began. Power-hungry, manipulative, striving, and most significantly, hurt and traumatized. It's such a fascinating exploration of these darker sides of the human psyche in a way that always remains realistic and true to itself, while at the same time allowing us to see and sympathize with people that are so drastically different from us, but without ever budging on the harsh realities of who these characters truly are. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate you. There's a certain sense of catharsis in being able to talk about Succession and the feelings it left me with, and I really appreciate you for listening. If you liked the video and like video essays and such, consider leaving a like and subscribing, or maybe shoot me a recommendation or an idea you'd like to see me discuss. Thank you once again. Take care and goodbye.